A dream worth fighting forth. Morning sunlight poured through the towering glass windows of the Manhattan conference room, casting geometric shadows across the polished table where Jasmine Brooks carefully arranged her presentation materials. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the foam board displaying her latest design concept. At 26 years old, this moment represented everything she had worked toward since graduating from Pratt Institute 3 years ago. Jasmine smoothed down her burgundy blazer. A thrift store find, she had tailored herself, and took a deep breath. Around her, representatives from established design firms set up elaborate digital presentations with confident efficiency. She was the only independent designer invited to pitch for the renovation of the historic Grandview Hotel, a beloved but fading landmark in Manhattan's theater district. 5 minutes. Everyone announced Patricia Chen, the hotel's operations director, scanning her clipboard with the precision of someone who valued punctuality above all else. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Breathe, baby girl. Your designs speak truth. Let them listen." The moment everything changed, the presentation room filled quickly. Hotel executives, architects, and financial advisors claimed their seats, creating an intimidating wall of expensive suits and critical expressions. Jasmine noticed one chair remained empty at the head of the table, presumably reserved for the mysterious primary investor everyone whispered about, but nobody seemed to know personally. Just as Patricia prepared to begin, the door opened. A tall man entered with quiet authority, his presence immediately shifting the room's energy. He wore a charcoal suit that spoke of understated wealth, and his dark hair showed distinguished traces of silver at the temples. But it was his eyes that caught Jasmine's attention. They held a thoughtful intensity, scanning the room not with arrogance, but with genuine curiosity. "Mr. Cross, welcome," Patricia said, her professional demeanor brightening considerably. "We were just about to begin." Nathaniel Cross. The name. Connected in Jasmine's mind 2 articles she had glimpsed about a billionaire developer who had spent the last decade transforming urban spaces across Europe and Asia. He had recently returned to New York, though the reasons remained vague in the press coverage. Presenting her vision, the first 3 firms presented safe, predictable concepts: luxury minimalism, contemporary chic, upscale modern. Each design could have belonged to any hotel in any city, stripping away the Grandview's unique character in favor of generic elegance. When Jasmine's turn arrived, her nervousness transformed into passionate determination. She stood, refusing to hide behind the podium, and began speaking from her heart. "The Grandview Hotel opened in 1924, she began, her voice steady and clear. "For nearly a century, this building has witnessed countless stories. Actors celebrating their Broadway debuts, families reuniting after wars, couples beginning their marriages. These walls hold memories that deserve respect, not erasure." She revealed her designs one by one. Instead of gutting the interior, her concepts celebrated the original Art Deco elements, while seamlessly integrating modern sustainability features. She proposed restoring the stunning ceiling murals, preserving the ornate ironwork, and incorporating energy-efficient systems that would be invisible to guests but revolutionary in function. "We do not need to destroy history to embrace the future," Jasmine continued, meeting the eyes of each person in the room. "We need to honor where we have been while building where we are going. This hotel can become a bridge between generations, showing that progress and preservation are not enemies but partners." The silence felt different from the polite pauses that followed previous presentations. This silence held weight, consideration, possibility, an unexpected invitation. Nathaniel Cross leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Miss Brooks, your approach is unconventional. Most designers want to impose their vision on a space. You seem to want the space to tell you what it needs." "Yes, exactly," Jasmine responded, surprised by his understanding. "Buildings are not blank canvases. They are living histories. Our job is to listen before we create." A slight smile touched Nathaniel's lips. "Where did you study?" "Pratt Institute. Before that, I grew up in Brooklyn, learning about design from my mother's flower shop. She taught me that beauty comes from understanding the nature of what you are working with, not forcing it into unnatural shapes. The other executives exchanged glances, clearly skeptical of her lack of corporate experience, but Nathaniel seemed genuinely intrigued. "Thank you, Miss Brooks," Patricia said, signaling the end of presentations. "We will deliberate and contact everyone by Friday." As participants gathered their materials, Jasmine felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling in her chest. She had given her best, but competing against established firms with prestigious portfolios seemed impossible for a young, independent designer working from a converted storage space in her apartment. "Miss Brooks, a moment, please." She turned to find Nathaniel Cross standing near the windows, hands in his pockets, looking more relaxed than during the formal presentation. "Yes, Mr. Cross. Would you join me for coffee? I would like to discuss your ideas further. Purely exploratory conversation, no obligations regarding the hotel decision." Jasmine hesitated. Throughout her young career, she had learned to be cautious of powerful men offering private meetings. Yet something in Nathaniel's demeanor felt different. His request held genuine interest, not predatory intention. "There is a cafe 2 blocks from here," she said carefully. "Public, excellent coffee, terrible acoustics for private conversation." Nathaniel laughed, a warm sound that softened his corporate exterior. "Perfect. Transparency is underrated in business dealings." Coffee and conversations, the cafe Jasmine chose was nothing like the upscale establishments where Nathaniel probably conducted most business. Mismatched furniture filled the narrow space. Local art covered the walls, and the espresso machine hissed with temperamental personality. But the coffee was exceptional. The atmosphere buzzed with authentic New York energy. They claimed a small table near the window. Watching the city rush past outside, Nathaniel ordered a simple black coffee, surprising Jasmine, who had expected something more elaborate. "You thought I would order some complicated drink?" he observed with amusement. "Maybe," she admitted. "Most wealthy clients I have worked with have very specific requirements about everything. Wealth often creates unnecessary complications," Nathaniel said thoughtfully. "My father was a construction worker in Queens. He taught me that good coffee needs nothing added if the beans are quality and the brewing is done with care. Simplicity reveals truth." This unexpected glimpse into his background shifted Jasmine's perception. She had assumed his wealth came from inheritance, not personal journey. "Why did you really ask me here?" she asked directly. "You have seen my portfolio now. You know I am younger and less experienced than the other firms. What interests you about my approach?" Nathaniel gazed out the window for a moment before answering. 10 years ago, I left New York chasing bigger opportunities abroad. I built hotels, office complexes, entire neighborhoods and cities that welcomed aggressive development. I became very successful by standard measurements. Wealthy, influential, respected in certain circles. He paused, his expression growing distant. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I fell in love with architecture in the first place. I forgot that buildings should serve human needs, not just investor returns. Your presentation reminded me of that original passion. You see spaces as stories, not just square footage and profit margins. As Jasmine found herself leaning forward, drawn into his unexpected candor. "What brought you back to New York?" "A marriage that ended badly. A realization that I had spent a decade building things while my own life crumbled, and a desire to reconnect with something real, something that matters beyond financial statements." The vulnerability in his admission surprised Jasmine. Powerful men rarely confess their failures to strangers, yet Nathaniel spoke with unguarded honesty. "I am guarded about relationships," Jasmine heard herself say, matching his openness. "My father left when I was 8, abandoning my mother without explanation. I watched her struggle for years, working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. She never dated again, never trusted another man with her heart. I inherited that caution." "Wise protection," Nathaniel acknowledged. "But lonely." "It's very Jasmine," agreed softly. A proposal beyond business, they talked for 2 hours, long after their coffee cups emptied. The conversation flowed easily between architecture and personal history, professional dreams, and private fears. Nathaniel asked thoughtful questions about her design philosophy, genuinely listening rather than waiting to speak. Jasmine found herself relaxing, her usual guardedness lowering incrementally. Regardless of the hotel decision, Nathaniel said finally, "I would like to offer you a consulting position on another project I am developing. A residential building in Brooklyn aimed at creating affordable housing that maintains neighborhood character rather than displacing existing communities. That is exactly the kind of work I want to do. But I have to ask, why me? You could hire any established firm?" "Because you understand something most designers do not. You understand that architecture is not about imposing vision, but about listening to what a place needs, what a community values. That perspective is rare and precious." He pulled out a business card, writing something on the back before handing it to her. "My personal number. Think about the offer. No pressure, no timeline. If you decide you are interested, call me." As they stood to leave, Jasmine felt something shift inside her. Not love. Not yet, but the tentative opening of a heart that had remained carefully locked for years. This man, with his wealth and success, treated her ideas with genuine respect. He saw her talent, not her youth or inexperience. He offered opportunity without demanding anything in return. "Thank you for the coffee and the conversation," she said, extending her hand professionally. Nathaniel took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Thank you for reminding me why buildings matter. I hope to hear from you soon, Jasmine." Walking back through the Manhattan streets toward the subway, Jasmine felt the business card burning with possibility in her pocket. The city around her seemed brighter somehow, full of potential she had stopped believing in. She did not know if this was the beginning of something professional, something personal, or perhaps both. But for the first time in years, she felt willing to find out. Above her, the afternoon sun broke through the buildings, casting golden light across the sidewalk. And in that moment, Jasmine Brooks allowed herself to hope that opening her heart might not lead to the pain she had always feared, but to something beautiful she had never imagined possible. The decision that changed everything 3 days passed before Jasmine gathered the courage to call the number on Nathaniel's card. She spent those days alternating between excitement and terror, her mind creating elaborate scenarios of everything that could go wrong. Her small studio apartment in Brooklyn became a war room of indecision, with sketches scattered across every surface as she threw herself into work to avoid thinking about the phone call she needed to make. On Thursday evening, her mother visited, unexpectedly carrying a bundle of fresh flowers from her shop. Rita Brooks took one look at her daughter's anxious face and the untouched dinner on the counter, then settled onto the worn couch with the knowing expression of someone who had raised a daughter alone and learned to read every emotion. "What has you so twisted up, baby girl?" Rita asked, arranging the flowers in a mason jar with practiced ease. Jasmine explained the hotel presentation, the coffee with Nathaniel, and the job offer that felt too good to be true. Her mother listened without interruption, her dark eyes thoughtful and assessing. "This man, he treated you with respect?" Rita asked when Jasmine finished. "Yes, more than that. He actually listened to my ideas. He saw my work as valuable, not just potential." Rita nodded slowly. "Your fear is not about the job opportunity. Your fear is about what else you felt during that conversation." Jasmine looked away, uncomfortable with her mother's perceptiveness. "I barely know him. Knowing someone and recognizing something real are different things," Rita said gently. "When I met your father, I knew within one conversation that he would matter in my life. I was right, though not in the way I hoped. But I have never regretted opening my heart that day, even though it brought pain later, because it also brought you." That night, after her mother left, Jasmine picked up her phone and dialed before she could change her mind. "The Brooklyn Project begins," Nathaniel answered on the second ring, his voice warm with genuine pleasure when he recognized her. They arranged to meet the following Monday at the site of his Brooklyn project, a neglected block of buildings in Bedford-Stuyvesant that had once housed a thriving community. When Jasmine arrived, she found Nathaniel waiting outside a row of connected brownstones, dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking more like a contractor than a billionaire. He held 2 cups of coffee and greeted her with an easy smile that made her nervousness dissipate slightly. I wanted you to see the space before we talk about what it could become, he explained, handing her the coffee. No preconceptions, just honest reactions. They walked through the buildings together, and Jasmine felt her designer's eye cataloging every detail. The structures were tired but not broken. Original hardwood floors lay beneath layers of cheap linoleum, ornate molding hid under decades of paint. Beautiful bones waited for someone to recognize their value.
How?
Most developers would demolish these buildings and start fresh, Nathaniel said, watching her examine a section of exposed brick. More profitable, less complicated. But I keep thinking about what you said at your presentation, about buildings being living histories. Jasmine ran her hand across the brick, feeling the texture of time and stories. These brownstones were built in the 1890s. Families have lived here for generations. If we are thoughtful, we can preserve that legacy while creating modern, sustainable housing. That is exactly what I hoped you would say. Over the next 6 weeks, they met 3 times each week to develop the project. Sometimes they worked in Nathaniel's temporary office downtown, other times in her cramped studio, and occasionally on site in Brooklyn. Jasmine quickly realized that Nathaniel's interest in her perspective was completely genuine. He never dismissed her ideas or overruled her designs. Instead, he asked questions, offered insights from his development experience, and trusted her creative vision. Late nights and deeper truths as April turned into May, their working relationship developed its own comfortable rhythm. Nathaniel learned that Jasmine worked best late at night, fueled by strong coffee and instrumental music. She discovered that he had an unexpected sense of humor, often making dry observations that caught her off guard and made her laugh. One evening, working past midnight in her studio, they took a break on her small balcony overlooking the Brooklyn streets. The city hummed with nocturnal life, sirens and conversations, and music blending into New York's constant symphony. "Can I ask you something personal?" Jasmine said, emboldened by exhaustion and the intimacy of the late hour. "Always," Nathaniel replied, leaning against the railing. "You mentioned your marriage ended badly. You want to talk about what happened?" Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, and Jasmine worried she had overstepped. But then he began speaking, his voice measured and honest. "Her name was Diana. We met when I was building a hotel complex in London 12 years ago. She was sophisticated, connected in all the right social circles, everything I thought I wanted in a partner." He paused. "But I was building an empire, constantly traveling, always chasing the next big project. She wanted a husband who came home, who was present. I wanted a wife who understood my ambitions. Neither of us was wrong. We simply wanted different lives." "That sounds painful," Jasmine said softly. "The divorce was finalized 8 months ago. We spent 5 years trying to make something work that was fundamentally incompatible. By the end, we were strangers sharing a legal document." He turned to look at her directly. "Coming back to New York, starting this project, meeting you, it feels like waking up from a long sleep where I forgot who I actually was." The vulnerability in his confession touched something deep in Jasmine's guarded heart. "My father left without explanation," she found herself sharing. "One day he was there, the next he was gone. My mother tried to shield me from the details, but I heard enough whispered conversations to understand. He left her for someone younger, someone he considered more appropriate for his advancing career. As if my mother was a stepping stone he could discard. That must have shaped how you see relationships. It taught me that love is not enough, that promises can be broken, that opening your heart is dangerous." Jasmine wrapped her arms around herself. "My mother never recovered. She built a good life, raised me well, but she never trusted another man. Part of me always believed I would follow the same pattern. And now?" Nathaniel asked gently. Jasmine met his eyes, finding understanding there instead of judgment. "Now I am terrified because I feel my walls cracking, rediscovering the city." Together, their collaboration extended beyond the brownstone project. On weekends, Nathaniel began inviting Jasmine to explore New York neighborhoods, claiming he needed to relearn his hometown after a decade away. She suspected he simply wanted to spend time with her outside of work, and she found herself accepting these invitations with increasing eagerness. They walked through the Lower East Side, where Nathaniel showed her the rent-controlled apartment where he grew up, now renovated beyond recognition. They explored the High Line at sunset, discussing how abandoned infrastructure could become community gathering spaces. They discovered a hidden rooftop garden in Queens where immigrant families grew vegetables from their home countries, creating pockets of memory in concrete jungle. During these excursions, Jasmine saw different facets of Nathaniel's character. He tipped generously but never ostentatiously. He spoke fluent Spanish with bodega owners and asked genuine questions about their families. He stopped to help an elderly woman carry groceries up subway stairs without expecting thanks or recognition. His wealth had not erased his working-class roots or created the entitled arrogance she had feared. One Saturday in late May, they took the ferry to Staten Island, not for any architectural reason, but simply to be on the water. Standing at the railing, as Manhattan's skyline receded, Nathaniel turned to her with unexpected seriousness. "I need to tell you something, and I want to be completely honest." Jasmine's stomach tightened with apprehension. "Okay. My feelings for you have evolved beyond professional admiration. You must have sensed this. I am not skilled at hiding emotions, despite years of corporate poker faces." He held up a hand before she could respond. "I am not asking anything from you. I simply cannot continue our working relationship without acknowledging this truth. You deserve honesty." The ferry's horn blasted, giving Jasmine a moment to gather her thoughts. She had known, of course. The lingering looks, the careful ways he found reasons for them to spend time together, the tenderness in how he spoke to her. She had felt the connection growing between them and had been simultaneously drawn to it and terrified of it. "I feel it too," she admitted quietly. "That is what scares me most. Not that you might hurt me intentionally, but that life has a way of destroying beautiful things. My mother loved my father completely. Look where that devotion led." "I understand your fear," Nathaniel said. "I spent 5 years in a marriage that slowly died despite both of us trying. I know relationships fail, but I also know that fear can become its own prison." They stood in silence as the ferry docked, the question hanging unspoken between them. When they disembarked, Nathaniel did not press for an answer. Instead, they walked along the waterfront, talking about everything except the elephant that now accompanied them. The rooftop confession, 2 weeks later. The brownstone project reached a critical milestone. The designs were finalized, permits approved, and construction ready to begin. Nathaniel suggested they celebrate on the rooftop of the building. Where his temporary office occupied the penthouse floor, the evening was perfect. Warm but not humid, with a breeze carrying the scent of approaching summer. The rooftop had been transformed into a garden space with potted plants, string lights, and a small table set with Thai food from Jasmine's favorite restaurant. "How did you know?" she asked, touched by the personal detail. "You mentioned it once 6 weeks ago. We were discussing neighborhood businesses we wanted to support in the Brooklyn project." "I pay attention, Jasmine." They ate and talked as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The city spread out around them, millions of lights beginning to twinkle like earthbound stars. Jasmine felt the familiar mix of contentment and anxiety that characterized all her time with Nathaniel now. "I have been thinking about what you said on the ferry," she began, setting down her fork. "About fear becoming a prison." Nathaniel waited, not rushing her. "My entire adult life, I have protected myself. I chose architecture partly because buildings are safer than people. You can control structures, predict their behavior, design solutions for their problems. People are messy and unpredictable." "They certainly are," he agreed with a slight smile. "But these past 2 months, working with you, talking with you, I have felt something I thought I would never allow myself to feel. Hope." She looked at him directly. "Hope that maybe opening my heart would not lead to the pain I have always feared. Hope that trust could be rewarded instead of betrayed." Nathaniel reached across the table, offering his hand palm up. An invitation, not a demand. Jasmine stared at his hand for a long moment, seeing in that simple gesture all the possibility and risk that terrified her. Then, in an act of courage that felt more significant than any professional accomplishment, she placed her hand in his. "I am afraid," she whispered. "So am I," he replied. "But I would rather be afraid together than safe and alone." He stood, gently pulling her up, and they moved to the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city they both loved. Nathaniel kept hold of her hand, his thumb tracing small circles on her palm. "I cannot promise I will never make mistakes," he said. "I cannot guarantee this will be easy. But I can promise complete honesty, genuine respect for your independence, and my best effort every single day. You are not a prize to be won, Jasmine. You are an equal partner I hope to walk beside." Oh. Jasmine felt tears prickling her eyes. "Nobody has ever spoken to me that way before, and they were fools who did not recognize your value." Standing there, 50 floors above the city, with Nathaniel's hand warm in hers, and the future spreading out, uncertain but suddenly less, she turned to face him fully, reached up to touch his face gently, and said the words that would change both their lives. "I want to be brave enough to try." Nathaniel pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that felt like safety and possibility combined. They stood that way for a long time, two people who had built walls around their hearts slowly beginning to dismantle them, brick by careful brick. When they finally kissed, it was gentle and tentative, a first chapter rather than a dramatic climax. The city lights sparkled around them, and somewhere in the streets below, life continued its chaotic dance. But on that rooftop, time seemed to pause, allowing two wounded hearts the space to begin healing together, meeting the family the following Saturday. Jasmine invited Nathaniel to dinner at her mother's house in Brooklyn. The brick row house in Crown Heights had been Rita's sanctuary for 2 decades, filled with plants, family photographs, and the lingering scent of whatever she was cooking. Jasmine felt her anxiety building as they climbed the front steps. "She is going to interrogate you," Jasmine warned. "My mother is protective." "Understandably so." Nathaniel squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I would be concerned if she was not protective. You are her daughter, her whole world." "I respect that." Rita opened the door before they could knock, her sharp eyes immediately assessing Nathaniel from head to toe. She wore a colorful apron over her Sunday dress, and her expression gave away nothing of her first impressions. "Mama, this is Nathaniel Cross," Jasmine said, her voice slightly higher than usual. "Nathaniel, my mother, Rita Brooks." "Mrs. Brooks, thank you for inviting me into your home," Nathaniel said, offering his hand along with a bouquet of sunflowers. "Jasmine mentioned these are your favorite." Rita's eyes flickered with surprise before she accepted both the handshake and the flowers. "Come in, then. Dinner is almost ready." The house smelled incredible. Rita had prepared her signature meal: slow-roasted chicken with herbs, roasted vegetables, rice and beans, and homemade cornbread. The dining table was set with her good dishes, the ones reserved for important occasions. As they sat down to eat, Rita wasted no time with small talk. "So, Nathaniel Cross, you are the billionaire developer who has hired my daughter." "I am a developer who has been fortunate in business." "Yes," Nathaniel replied calmly. "But more accurately, I am collaborating with your daughter because her vision and talent are exceptional. She is not working for me. We are working together. My daughter is 26 years old. You are what, late 30s? That is quite an age difference." 38, Nathaniel confirmed. 12 years. "I understand why that concerns you." Jasmine felt her cheeks burning. "Mama, please." But Rita was not finished. "I raised my daughter alone after her father walked away. I worked 3 jobs to give her opportunities. She put herself through college, built her career from nothing. I will not sit quietly while someone with money and power takes advantage of her youth or ambition." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jasmine wanted to disappear, but Nathaniel remained composed, meeting Rita's fierce gaze with respect rather than defensiveness. "You are absolutely right to question my intentions," he said seriously. "If I were you, I would be equally protective. So let me be direct. I care deeply for your daughter. Not because of her youth or any power dynamic, but because she reminds me of why I fell in love with architecture before success complicated everything. She sees the world with clarity and compassion. She fights for what matters. She refuses to compromise her values." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I was married for 5 years to someone my own age, someone from my social class. That relationship failed because we wanted different things. Age and background do not guarantee compatibility. What matters is mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's well-being and growth. Rita studied him silently, her expression still guarded. Pretty words, Mr. Cross, but words are easy. Actions reveal truth. I agree completely, Nathaniel replied, which is why I am not asking for your approval tonight. I am simply hoping you will watch how I treat your daughter and judge me by those actions over time. Something shifted in Rita's expression. She glanced at Jasmine, who sat frozen, then back to Nathaniel. My daughter is the most precious thing in this world to me. Her happiness is my only concern. Then we want the same thing, Nathaniel said simply. The tension eased gradually as dinner progressed. Rita asked questions about the Brooklyn project, and Nathaniel answered with genuine enthusiasm, crediting Jasmine's designs repeatedly. He helped clear dishes without being asked, complimented Rita's cooking with specific appreciation rather than generic praise, and listened attentively when Rita talked about her flower shop and the community she served. By dessert, Rita's guard had lowered enough that she shared stories from Jasmine's childhood. Nathaniel laughed at the tale of 8-year-old Jasmine rearranging all the furniture in their apartment, according to better flow principles she had seen on a home design show. She has always seen spaces differently, Rita said, her voice softening with maternal pride. Even as a little girl, she understood that rooms affect people's feelings. When it was time to leave, Rita walked them to the door. She pulled Jasmine aside while Nathaniel pretended to examine family photos in the hallway. He is not what I expected, Rita admitted quietly. I wanted to dislike him, to find reasons to warn you away. But he looks at you the way a man should look at a woman he values. Still, baby girl, be careful. Guard your heart while you are learning if his actions match his words. I am trying, Mama, Jasmine replied. It is hard to balance hope with caution. That balance is called wisdom, Rita said, kissing her daughter's forehead. You are braver than I ever was. I admire that. As they walked to Nathaniel's car, Jasmine felt emotionally exhausted, but strangely lighter. I am sorry about the interrogation. Do not apologize, Nathaniel said firmly. Your mother loves you fiercely. That is beautiful, not something to apologize for. Besides, she had every right to question me. I am glad she cares enough to be difficult. The project comes to life. Summer arrived with its humid intensity. The Brooklyn brownstone project moved from designs to reality. Jasmine found herself spending long days on site, wearing a hard hat and work boots, consulting with contractors and making real-time decisions as challenges arose. Nathaniel was there almost daily. Despite having other projects and business obligations demanding his attention, he never micromanaged or overruled her decisions. Instead, he ran interference with city inspectors, handled financial logistics, and worked alongside construction crews when extra hands were needed. One afternoon, Jasmine watched him helping to carefully remove original molding from a damaged section of wall, working with patient precision under the guidance of a master carpenter. His expensive shirt was dusty, his hands were scraped, and he looked completely content. You did not have to come today, she said during their lunch break. Sitting on a pile of lumber in what would eventually become a courtyard garden? You have people who handle the physical labor. I wanted to be here, Nathaniel replied, biting into a sandwich from the bodega down the street. This project matters to me. Not just financially, but personally. Besides, I like working with my hands. Reminds me where I came from. You are different from what I expected, Jasmine admitted. When I first met you, I thought you would be distant, maybe condescending. Instead, you are the most present person I have ever known. Nathaniel looked at her thoughtfully. My marriage taught me that success means nothing if you are absent from your own life. I spent years chasing bigger deals, larger projects, more impressive accomplishments, but I was not present for the things that actually mattered. I do not want to repeat those mistakes. Their relationship deepened through these shared experiences. They developed private jokes about stubborn contractors and impossible building codes. They celebrated small victories, like finding original tin ceilings hidden above drop panels, and worked through frustrations when supply delays threatened timelines. One evening, exhausted after a particularly challenging day. They sat on the front steps of the brownstone, watching the sunset paint the Brooklyn sky. Nathaniel's arm rested casually around Jasmine's shoulders. She leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she had never experienced before. "Do you ever have doubts?" she asked. "About us, I mean. We are so different in so many ways." "Different does not mean incompatible," Nathaniel replied. "You challenge me to be better, to remember what matters. I hope I offer you something valuable, too." "You do," Jasmine said softly. "You believe in me. Not in some distant, encouraging way, but actively. You create space for my ideas to flourish. You treat my dreams as important as your own." "That is not generosity, Jasmine. That is simply recognizing your worth." The grand opening, for months after construction began, the Brooklyn Brownstone project reached completion. 10 units of beautiful, affordable housing that honored the building's history while providing modern, sustainable living spaces. Local families who had been displaced by rising rents were given priority for applications. The response overwhelmed everyone involved. Nathaniel organized a community celebration for the grand opening. Instead of a fancy ribbon cutting with politicians and press, they threw a block party with food from local restaurants, music from neighborhood musicians, and an open house where anyone could tour the renovated spaces. Jasmine stood in the central courtyard she had designed. Watching families explore their potential new homes, children ran through the garden space where native plants and vegetables would soon grow. Elderly neighbors sat on benches she had positioned to encourage community gathering. Everything she had envisioned was coming to life. "You did this," Nathaniel said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of lemonade from the refreshment table. "We did this," Jasmine corrected. "Your resources, your connections, your willingness to prioritize community over maximum profit. This project would not exist without your commitment." "Resources are meaningless without vision," Nathaniel countered. "You provided the vision. I simply helped make it possible." A journalist from a local paper approached, asking for an interview about the project. Nathaniel stepped back, insisting that Jasmine should be the one featured. "This is her design, her philosophy, brought to life. I am just the fortunate investor who got to be part of it." Later that evening, after the crowds dispersed and the sun set, Jasmine and Nathaniel returned to the courtyard alone. String lights cast a warm glow over the space, and the sounds of the neighborhood created a peaceful backdrop. "I have something for you," Nathaniel said, pulling a rolled paper from his bag. "The title deed for this property. I am transferring it to a community land trust, as we discussed. But I wanted you to be the one who signs off on the final paperwork. Your name should be on this achievement." Jasmine felt tears building in her eyes. Throughout the project, Nathaniel had repeatedly given her credit, refused to center himself in the story, and ensured her professional reputation grew from their collaboration. He had kept every promise about treating her as an equal partner. "Why are you so good to me?" she whispered. "Because you deserve goodness," he replied simply. "Because loving you means supporting your growth, not limiting it. Because your success brings me more joy than any of my own accomplishments ever have." The word love hung in the air between them, spoken so naturally that its weight took a moment to register. "You love me?" Jasmine asked, her voice small and wondering. "Completely," Nathaniel confirmed. "I have for weeks now, but I did not want to say it until you felt secure enough to hear it without fear." Jasmine thought about the past months. How Nathaniel had shown up consistently, respected her boundaries, celebrated her victories, and supported her through challenges. How he had met her mother's scrutiny with grace, worked alongside construction crews without arrogance, never once used his wealth or position to diminish her contributions. He had not rescued her. He had not tried to shape her into someone different. He had simply seen her completely and chosen to stand beside her while she built the life she wanted. "I love you too," she said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I did not think I could. I did not think I knew how. But you taught me that love does not have to mean losing myself." Nathaniel pulled her close, and they kissed in the courtyard they had created together, surrounded by the physical manifestation of what happens when 2 people build something with mutual respect, shared vision, and genuine care. 6 months later, the following spring, Jasmine stood in the lobby of the Grandview Hotel on opening night. Her original designs had been selected months ago, and the renovation was finally complete. The space glowed with restored Art Deco elegance, updated with invisible, sustainable systems and accessible design features. Her mother stood beside her, elegant in a new dress, tears of pride streaming down her face. Jasmine's small design firm had grown to include 3 associates, and she had just signed contracts for 2 more projects that would allow her to continue the work she loved. Preserving history while building futures, Nathaniel arrived fashionably late, as he had promised he would. "Your night, your spotlight," he had insisted. "I am just the proud partner in the audience." But when he entered the lobby and saw Jasmine surrounded by admirers and press, his face held such open love and pride that several people noticed and smiled. Later, when the crowd thinned and they finally had a moment alone, Nathaniel took her hand and led her to a quiet corner near the restored fountain. "I've been waiting for the right moment," he said, reaching into his pocket. This seemed appropriate. The place where we first met, now transformed into something new, while honoring what it always was. He dropped to one knee, and Jasmine's breath caught. Jasmine Brooks. "You have transformed my life as completely as you transformed this building. You reminded me who I wanted to be. You challenged me to do better, to value people over profits, to stay present for what actually matters."